So you wanna know how to make sourdough bread? Well, you've come to the right place, but let me start out by saying good luck, okay? This is a journey. It will require a lot of patience, a lot of observation, but you can do it. It's not hard. It's really not. People try to overcomplicate it, and you don't need all of the little gadgets. Sure, they're fun and they make it a lot easier. You don't need all that stuff. You don't need a dough hook. You don't need a Banneton basket. You just need bowls and spatulas in your hands, okay? You're gonna need water, flour, an active starter. What am I forgetting? Salt. You're gonna need salt. I've been making sourdough for about 4 years now. I got my starter from a friend. You can also make your own starter. My starter's been with me from a cross-country move from Maine to Texas, and it's also gone in my fridge untouched for like 9 months. 9 months plus. So today I want to show you how I've been recently making sourdough and how easy it can be. Let's get started. Okay, first step. This is my starter. It does not have a name. I know everyone's obsessed with naming their starters. I choose not to humanize my starter. I fed my starter this morning at about 9 o'clock. This is where it started out, and it has now doubled in size. It's nice and bubbly, and it's doming on top, and it's still rising, I believe, a little bit. You want to kind of capture your starter at its peak of rising right before it starts to fall. We need 100 grams of starter, 330 grams of lukewarm water, and we're gonna mix those two things, and then add our salt and flour. So let's do it. I'm going to use my favorite bowl for making sourdough is a glass heavyweight bowl, because you're gonna be doing a lot of mixing, turning, roughhousing with your sourdough dough, and you're gonna need a bowl that has weight or can stick to your counter kind of well. Either that or you'll be battling with the plastic bowl. So I got this at a thrift store. It's just a Pyrex glass bowl. And then you will need a scale. I got this scale from Target. It's pretty inexpensive. Baking anything with a scale, 10 times better than baking with not a scale. I'm going to zero out my measurements, so now it's at 0. Next thing, we're going to add 330 grams of water, but it really works better if the water is a little bit lukewarm or kind of warm. You don't want it to be hot, but you do want it to be warm. So I'm gonna microwave this. Okay, I just microwaved it for 30 seconds. Now it's going back on the scale, 330. Next up, we're gonna take our bubbly sourdough, and I'm going to pour in 100 grams. So I could zero it out, but I'm just gonna add 100 grams to this. It's going in. Before I move on, I just want to point out that the starter's floating is the float test. That's how you know it is nice and airy, full of bubbles, and ready to make sourdough. Okay, so now my sourdough is depleted, okay? I'm gonna scrape down the sides and revisit this when I'm done mixing everything else, because we will want to feed the sourdough so that way we can build up more starter. Now I'm gonna give this a quick mix. Another good sign of active starter once mixing with everything is all these bubbles. Now I'm gonna zero my scale. Now we're gonna add 450 grams of bread flour. You can use regular flour, but bread flour just has a higher protein count. So I've zeroed my scale. Whoa. And now we just need 10 grams of salt. Sometimes I like to mix this before I add the salt, just because the salt really like dries out my hands and makes them sometimes hurt, not gonna lie. But I'm just gonna go ahead and mix these two up with the 10 grams of salt. My scale's freaking out that I've got too much weight in there, so I'm going to use a little ramekin and just weigh out 10 grams of salt and add it in. Sourdough is completely combined. Now, to let that flour fully absorb the water, we're gonna let it sit and rest for 30 minutes before we start our stretch and folds. We are going to do 4 rounds of stretch and folds. This is really kind of like up to your discretion, how your dough's looking at that point. If it is getting stronger gluten strands, if it's not developing, it may need more help with the stretch and folds. But right now we're gonna cover it with a cloth and then let it sit for 30 minutes, come back and do stretch and folds. While that's resting, I'm going to show you how I feed my sourdough starter. So this is about how much we have. I'm going to leave it in this weck jar. I really like these weck jars. Pro tip, you want a jar with a large mouth so you can do a good amount of stirring and scooping and getting all of the sourdough starter off the sides. Highly recommend the weck jars. Many people would start by putting it on a scale and adding a ratio of some sort. I, however, very much so subscribe to the pancake consistency method. So if you've ever made pancakes, you know how the pancake batter looks whenever you mix it all together. I've scraped down my sides. My starter's at the bottom. We don't have very much, so I'm gonna give it a good feeding, meaning I'll probably do more than I usually do. I'm just scooping in a spoonful at a time. I'm gonna do 2.5 spoonfuls. Now you wanna put in a little bit of water, not too much, then you'll have to add more flour. And you want to make sure that it is like a purified water. This is purified drinking water, which I don't think is the suggested type to put in, but I digress. I think you would really rather do like bottled spring water, but I'm gonna just do that much to start out with. And now we vigorously stir. Okay, I can already tell it's too dry. I'm going to add a little bit more. Still too dry. This is still a little bit too dry of a feed for me, so I'm gonna do a little bit more water. This is really a good consistency. It's kind of chunky still, not too runny, and well combined. You wanna make sure to, after this, scrape down your sides. It's gonna get messy. You will wanna change jars every so often due to not wanting to grow any sort of mold in this environment. There we go. Now we're kind of back at that rubber band line where I started. Use a paper towel to wipe that extra sourdough off so it doesn't clog our drains. You're ready to put your lid back on and set her back on the counter. If I wasn't planning to bake more sourdough in the next coming days, I would most likely put that back into the fridge, make sure it's sealed and put back in the fridge. That way, whenever I wanna make another loaf, I could just pull it out, reactivate it, let it warm up on the counter. That's very much so the laid back version of feeding your sourdough starter. There are lots of ratios to feed your sourdough starter. A lot of people do a 1 to 1 to 1, which is 10 grams starter, 10 grams flour, 10 grams water, and then just mix it all together. I like to feel it out. I like the pancake batter method because some days I want more sourdough starter, some days I want to just barely feed it, and you will need to discard it before you feed it every time. There's a whole world of sourdough starter that if you need all the information, probably isn't the video. But I highly suggest joining sourdough groups on Facebook. I'm in one basically because my best friend told me about it. There's so many people that love to talk about sourdough constantly on TikTok or Instagram. Find those creators, follow them. I'm just showing you how I make loaf of sourdough. And now on to our first set of stretch and folds. More than 30 minutes has passed, but that's how I roll with my laid back sourdough method. So uncovered, she's much smoother. You can tell she's still kind of like rugged, looks a little like lumpy. That all goes away when we start our stretch and folds. So the whole point of stretch and folds is to build the gluten, and you'll see over time that it will become more bubbly, round, jiggly, all the fun words. First, I'm going to wet my hand and then I'm gonna start stretch and folding. We take it, we scoop. I start to just kind of scoop all the sides off of the bowl, okay? Stretch, fold. Be rough with it. I think that helps build the gluten. I think like tough love is good for your sourdough. So you're gonna do 4 of these stretch and fold, 1 for each side. 4 quadrants, stretching and folding. I actually think I do more than 4 on the first round, just because it's usually the stretchiest at this point. That's about how it should look by the time you're done with your first stretch and folds. We just cover it back up and we will see her again in 30 minutes. Okay, it's been 30 minutes. Time for our second round of stretch and folds. How's our dough looking? Pretty good. Thirty more minutes. Okay, I've got my cameraman here to help get up close and personal to show you exactly what I'm doing. We're on the 3rd round of stretch and folds, okay? Notice how smooth the dough has gotten. It also is developing some bubbles, which is really good. I'm going to wet my hand real quick. Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing I've done all the other times. I'll scoop under, see it's pulling away from the bowl better too now, meaning that the dough wants to stick together and not stick to the bowl. I'll start just a normal stretch and fold, slap it down, get under there, see how stretchy it is getting. Slap it down. Do a couple more. Notice how it's balling up easier now. That's good. It's growing stronger. It wants to stick together. Give it a few wiggles to really stretch it. And that is a really good way to tell too that the gluten is developing strong. I know that I said that you usually do 3 or 5 stretch and folds, but that's kind of an overkill right now. I might do one more round of stretch and folds and then cover it and let it rest on the counter. Okay, we're covering it. We'll let it rest on the counter until I probably go to bed. So probably for 5, 6, 7 hours. Do not zoom in. And then I will show you, and then I should show you how I prepare it to go into the fridge for the cold ferment. We'll check in then. It's time to do the stretch and folds. The loaf has doubled in size, and that's how you know it's ready to go into the fridge for the cold ferment. Also, another good tell is that it's very bubbly on the bottom. It's nice and jiggly, and that is also a good sign. You don't want it to sit on your counter too long or it will over ferment, and then that's a whole nother issue. To prepare for this, I use a loaf pan, and then I will just put a dishcloth in here and then sprinkle a little bit of flour. I will lightly flour the surface, and then we will let the sourdough do its thing. Add more flour. Okay, I'm going to stretch it. Kind of stretch it out in a big rectangle as much as I can without tearing it. And I'm going to fold it over, and then I'm going to roll it like a burrito as tightly as possible, creating lots of tension. Beautiful. And then tuck in the ends. Maybe pop some of the bubbles. We really don't want all the bubbles. And then I'm going to transfer it into there. And then tuck it in for its nice long nap, and we will put it in the fridge to ferment for at least 12 hours, I believe. Maybe at least like 6 hours, but I probably won't do it for, I probably won't bake it until about 10 a.m. tomorrow. So into the fridge it goes. And we will bake it in the morning. Big cut. Good morning. It's time to warm up our Dutch oven. So I'm gonna put it in the oven at 450 and let it preheat until the oven is warm and it's been in there for at least 30 minutes. First things first, parchment paper. We need a generous amount of parchment paper. Okay. And then I'm going to, this helps it sit flat. This helps it, I don't know, just like lay better. Hopefully that's enough. I think we're good. We're gonna wake up our sourdough. It's time to be put into the oven. I'm gonna put a little bit of flour, flip her out, comes out super easy. Move it over a little bit. Now this is where some people get really fancy. I don't require a fancy design. I haven't gotten to that level of sourdough. And I also don't have a bread lame, which is what you cut your bread with. And you may see some of them making fancy designs. My weapon of choice, scissors, okay? This is a very simple thing to do. It's not uncommon. This is a crucial part of preparing your sourdough for the Dutch oven because it needs somewhere to let air escape or you will form giant pocket holes in your bread. And that just doesn't make for a very good slice. You don't want a giant hole in your slice of bread. So this is what I do. I just cut big slit along the side, okay? You wanna make sure it's like fairly deep. That's good. You could get fancy with it. I like to do this sometimes too. Now I'm going to get the Dutch oven out of the oven. Okay, be very careful because it's hot. Some people will preheat their ovens at like 500 and then lower it to 450 to bake, which isn't a bad idea at all. So if you're feeling that, do that. Taking my loaf, placing her inside. Recently, I like to add a little bit of water and I put it underneath just to create a little bit of steam, and then off to the oven. In the oven, now I'm going to set a timer for 20 minutes, and then once the 20 minutes is up, I will remove the lid and it will continue to bake for another 25 minutes until I think it's nice and crispy on top, and also an internal temperature of like, I think it's 212, 206. Okay, we'll check in 20 minutes. 20 minutes are up. Need these. Very, very hot. I'm gonna take this lid off. Okay, moment of truth. Oh my gosh, gorgeous. She looks good. She's risen like perfectly. Now we just want it to brown on top and cook a little bit more. So it's going back into the oven with no lid. Checking the internal temperature is just really good. I mean, every kitchen needs a digital thermometer just to check when you're cooking chicken, when you're cooking, I don't know, meatballs, steaks. That way, whenever you cut into your sourdough, it's not gummy, it's not like kind of, you know, doughy still. We'll check that and we'll see in 20 minutes. Okay, there are 4 more minutes on my timer, but I can smell it. I've just like got a sense that maybe it's done. Let's look at it. I think it looks done. Let's see what the temperature is. This is the current state. She's beautiful. I'm just gonna go into the center. We're at about 211, which is great, but we're not gonna cut into it yet. We've gotta give it at least 45 minutes to fully cool down in the center and be done cooking. She's so beautiful though. She's kind of got like a mohawk going on. Fully gonna let her rest, go do other stuff, and revisit in 45 minutes. Okay, it's been many hours later, and it's time to cut into this beautiful loaf. Also, like, cutting it is my least favorite part of the whole process. It's so messy, and the crust is hard, okay? Taste test. So delicious. That's really all there is to it. So delicious. I'm making soup tonight, and this is gonna go perfect with soup. Honestly, I've been waiting to make soup until I had sourdough. That's the end of this video, guys. I hope that this helped you. I will put like the instructions down in the description along with some other maybe resources. Thanks for watching. This was my laid back version of making sourdough. It doesn't have to be so serious. Comment any questions below and I'll try to do my best to answer them. Cheers, guys. See you in the next video.